Burnt Toast!
We're back on. I've got the Pope Dave Bell, with me here on the Burnt Toast Show. This is our big break after the second set. We usually don't do this, but this is special. It's really special, Dave. But that was Brand X. We had two Phil Collins songs on there. I do want to talk a little bit about Phil Collins, and I guess time to talk shit about Phil Collins. But anyway, Brand X, they were a British fusion band that was formed in London in 1974. And they were Robin Lumley on keyboards, John Goodsell on the guitar, and Percy Jones on the bass were with that band for a very long time. And they were trying to get Bill Bruford on the drums. Bill was not into it. But
Yeah,
then Phil Collins found out about it, and he was very unsure of his future with Genesis because that was the year that Peter Gabriel quit. I think
right.
75. And
hmm
so he said, "Well, I'll do it." And it looked to all involved like it was a Phil Collins side project, but in
hmm
fact, it was not. He didn't know that the Genesis was going to stay together, and actually, he would be the new front man.
Right.
And they were a very formidable fusion band. I mean, his playing on this track, what's the name of this track? This is called
Nuclear
Nu-
burn
Nuclear Burn, and the album is called oh, I can't remember. It's their first album. It's
or
their debut.
unorthodox.
Unorthodox Behavior. It's their
Yeah,
first
yeah.
album. It came out in June of 1976. See, I wrote down that when it came out, but not the name of the album. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm here all
And
night.
that and like you just pulled that off the top.
Right. But Brand X, they were sort of the British answer to like Return to Forever and well, the Mahavishnu Orchestra was run by a British guy, but they were sort of the the British answer to Return to Forever and
Right.
all the fusion stuff that was happening over here. And Bruford did really come up with his own fusion band with Alan Holdsworth and Jeff Berlin,
hmm
just called Bruford. But they were different from Brand X. This was definitely a chops oriented band, and this is a chops oriented tune. Now, Phil
hmm
Collins sounds great on this, and he sounds great on the Genesis song as well. We're going to talk about Phil Collins because Phil Collins, I saw some video this week of Phil Collins who looks pretty rough. I saw an interview,
Yeah. He's looking rough these
and
days.
he can't play drums at all anymore.
Yeah.
And what happened is something in his neck, like a vertebrae in his neck that he had operated on several times, and he can no longer like open and close his hands
Damn.
properly. And he hasn't been able to
hmm
since like 2009. It'd been coming on for a long time. And you think about how great he was, and it's amazing how great he was because everything he did as far as setup and his approach was just totally wrong. You know what I mean? As far
hmm
as ergonomics and fluidity, he kept his snare drum down below his knees. And anytime you see a drummer with his snare drum down, you know what the snare drum is, below
hmm
his knees, he's playing down into it, which means he's leaning forward, doing that thing. And he kept the toms up real high. And he played real hard. I saw an interview with Chester Thompson, the tour drummer that toured with them for years and years. And he said that Phil used to take his drumsticks and saw off like a quarter of the drumstick. And so that like eliminated bounce. So like he's hitting as hard as possible and not getting any bounce. And that goes
hmm
straight up into your neck. It's very interesting, the Phil Collins story, because he's such an iconic drummer. And for him
hmm
just to not be able to, because Bruford's back, Bruford's playing again, after a
Right.
12-year hiatus or something like that. But Phil will
hmm
not be back. That's just tough, man.
Yeah.
And
And his son's playing, but I haven't heard enough of him to make a comment whether he's
yeah, he's
approaching
not
his
Phil
level or
Collins.
not.
He's not Phil
No.
Collins. You know,
Yeah.
that was and Phil Collins was a fusion drummer in the 70s, and then by the 80s, with the advent of, I think it started with a Peter Gabriel song, Intruder, right, with that drum sound,
hmm
and then In the Air Tonight. And if you listen to like even like Easy Lover, which he produced and co-wrote with Philip Bailey,
hmm
it's got that drum sound on it, that big
Yeah,
80s Phil Collins
we
drums.
we used to refer to it as the blickum. It was like blickum, 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 blickum. He would
Yeah, that's
always
right. That's right. That was
he
his
would
thing.
always do that in every song.
But he had that very distinctive tom sound, and it was very non-fusiony. You know what I mean? It was busy, but it was more like it was like a big rock drum sound, I
hmm
think. And I think so he kind of had, like Tony Williams, he had two iconic sounds, one for one decade and one for the other one. That's
Yeah,
pretty cool, man.
yeah,
And
hmm
but he ruined himself by ignoring ergonomics.
yeah,
That's my theory. Before that, we
Yeah.
heard Frank Zappa. We heard side one of Apostrophe. It was his fifth solo LP, but that wasn't his fifth LP. He had done tons of LPs with the Mothers of
Yeah.
Invention. That came out in March of 1974. We heard, and this was a huge success. It's still his best-selling album. How about that? Apostrophe is
Yeah.
best-selling Zappa album. We heard, let's see, Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, Nanook Rubs It, St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast, Father Oblivion, and Cosmic Debris. Now, this was an important one to me because this was the first Zappa that I heard. I
Hmm.
think I'd seen him on Saturday Night Live, but in like 77 or 78 on WXKE back in the day, on Sunday nights they would have Dr. Demento and then Jim
Hmm.
Ladd interview and then the Jazz Hour. I was really into that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and Dr. Demento actually, like I want to say it was the second one. The first one I think was Cheech and Chong were the guests. And then the second one was Zappa. Zappa actually was on the Dr. Demento show talking about his music.
Hmm.
And they played like about half of that. And I was like,
Yeah.
what is this? This is, I mean, I was, 12, 13, 14 years old. And I was really into that. And I
Hmm.
became a pretty big Zappa fan at that point. I started buying
Oh
all
yeah.
that stuff. And I still have the Apostrophe album. But anyway, that was Frank Zappa on the guitar and vocals, George Duke on the keyboards and vocals, Napoleon Murphy Brock on the saxophone and vocals, Sal Marquez on the trumpet, Bruce Fowler on the trombone, Tom Fowler on the bass, Ralph Humphrey on the drums, and Ruth Underwood on the vibes, marimba, and percussion. They were joined by Tina Turner and the Ikettes. Tina Turner and the
Hmm.
Ikettes were on Overnight Sensation, which was the album before this, and then they were on this one, Apostrophe. There were like three albums that had that same kind of band, not exactly the four albums that had that same band on it. The four albums were Overnight Sensation, Apostrophe, Roxy, and Elsewhere, and then One Size Fits All. And to me, that was one of the great versions with George Duke, especially one of the great
Yeah.
versions of the Mothers of Invention. But Tina Turner, they recorded those albums at Ike Turner's studios. And so Tina was not only like Tina cooked for them. That's trippy, man. You know,
Yeah.
Tina would, the band's hungry, Tina, go cook for them. That's wow. Okie doke.
Yeah.
But she did the vocals. She actually did that vocal on Montana in the middle. Ba da 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 ba da da.
Yeah.
That's Tina
Didn't they
Turner.
speed it up a little bit
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
to yeah.
Well, I mean, Ike didn't want anybody to know that was her. He
Ike
didn't.
didn't or Frank didn't want Mike to know.
Ike didn't want it. Ike didn't want her. Ike. I remember the quote was, or Tina Turner played that for him, and he went, "What is that shit?" You know.
Yeah.
And I think Ike was real uptight about he could use Tina and the Ikettes, but he didn't want them credited, and he didn't want Frank to pay them any more than he did, which was like $25 a song or something like that.
Which, to my understanding, Frank paid them another way so they got more money
Yeah,
than Ike would allow
yeah,
because he was like, "Fuck that,"
yeah, yeah. Right, right, right,
basically.
right, right, right. Yeah. So and that's cool, but I thought that band was incredible. And some of it anymore, I'm in my 60s now, and some of it sounds really juvenile to me, you know what I mean? Watch out where the Huskies go and don't you eat that yellow snow. Okay, fine, whatever. But
Yeah.
that actually opened him up to a completely different audience that he had started sort of to cultivate with the Flo and Eddie band before that, where it
Hmm.
was it was almost like a comedy thing, and he'd always
Yeah,
been kind of a
I'm not a
satirist.
huge fan of the Flo and Eddie period.
Neither am I.
There,
Neither am I. No.
there's some good stuff in there, but that's not my favorite period of Zappa. I would say the early stuff, that the period of that, and then a lot of the live stuff, but that comes from various periods. A lot of the live stuff is really good.
Yeah.
Aside the Flo and Eddie live stuff is not. That's probably the reason I like it the least. I don't really care for the live period with them, but like to me, one of the great Zapp albums is the best band you never heard in your life,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
one of those
The
albums
88
where
tour. The 88 tour.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
which
that's an incredible one.
no, the band didn't get along, and he basically ended up firing everybody.
Yeah.
But they played like 5 gigs, and they were superb
Well, I think
gigs.
they did Europe and then they came through America, and everybody in the band, the musical director for that band was Scott Tunis, because Frank was off in Czechoslovakia and shit like that,
Yeah,
And
because he was huge there.
I know. And
Yeah.
so he had this bass player, Scott Tunis, who was more like a punk bass player, oddly enough,
Hmm.
um, that he put in charge of the band. He was the musical director, and everybody hated him. He was like this Nazi, and
Yeah.
everybody just hated him. And they kind of went, well, at one point they kind of said, well, we hate Scott. It's him or us. And he went, well, we can't go back and do 6 weeks of rehearsals. I got gigs coming up. So he just canceled the tour and fired everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it got really ugly, I guess, really ugly. I don't know. I've never heard direct stories about that other than Scott Tunis. I read a thing that Scott Tunis, but Chad Wackerman doesn't talk about that. And Mike Keneally doesn't really talk about that.
Yeah.
None of those guys really talk about it. So you don't really know what happened. But I know that Scott
Right.
Tunis was unbearable to deal with. And that,
That's a
that,
shame because
that killed
man,
that band, man.
that band sounded so good.
And after that, right after that, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and that was
Yep.
that, you know. So
Yep.
before Zappa, we heard Genesis from their first album without Peter Gabriel. It was their seventh LP called Trick of the Tail, and we heard one that you recommended, Dance on the Volcano, which was the first song written for the album and the first song on the album.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, and the first song that Phil Collins sang the lead on as a lead singer. He had sung a couple things before, but as far as being the lead singer, this was the first
And the
one.
time signatures in that song are insane. I
Absolutely.
mean, it's like that's one thing I was gonna try and write down before that, like all the different time signatures, but it's insane
Yeah.
the way it moves through that song.
Well, that's what
It's
prog bands did back in the day.
yeah.
That's what they did. I don't know whether we still have that happening because I don't know if there's a record industry where you would actually,
I
but
think about the only band that's kind of doing that is Porcupine Tree.
okay. Yeah.
They're kind of like
Like a high profile
maintaining,
band that, yeah.
yeah, high
Yeah.
profile band that's doing prog. There's a handful of other people that are doing prog. It's just not as high profile as say Porcupine Tree.
Yeah. But on this Dance on the Volcano, Phil Collins on the drums and the vocals, Steve Hackett on the guitar, Mike Rutherford on the bass, and Tony Banks on the keyboards. And of course, we started off with the Mahavishnu Orchestra, Meeting of the Spirits from their album called The Inner Mounting Flame. It was their debut album. It came out in November of 1971 and really set the jazz world ablaze. It was the first really, I heard that they were like unbelievably loud and they would play like club gigs and just be like
Wow.
unbelievably loud, like Marshall stacks, like Cream, in a club. But
Yeah.
John McLaughlin on the guitar, Billy Cobham on the drums, Jan Hammer on the keyboards, Rick Laird on the bass, and Jerry Goodman on the violin. The Mahavishnu Orchestra. So, and you picked out a bunch of those, or a couple of them,
Hmm.
three out of the four. I added the Zappa in there. So,
Yeah.
so
Well,
um,
you know me, I'm never going to say no to Zappa. So,
right. Do you have a favorite Zappa album?
well, I'd say, uh, best band you never heard in your life is up there. I would say, and yes, there's lots of Juvenile on it, but Live in New York, I think is really good. I think there's a lot of really good on Live in New York.
Yeah, that's a killer band.
Um, I think, let's see. I would say, this one, Apostrophe is right up there for me. Um, I don't know. There's a lot of albums that uh, uh, there's like sides of albums that are just amazing on some of the live albums
Yeah,
that are just
like the
stunning. I mean, a lot of his live stuff
Roxy and
is really
Elsewhere.
great.
Roxy and Elsewhere is like that.
Roxy and Elsewhere would be up there for me too.
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
yep, absolutely. I kind of like some of his weird off ones. I like the one where he did like the doo-wop album. That was
Was it
just weird as hell, but I like
Cruising
that.
with Ruben and the Jets? That one?
Cruising with Ruben and the Jets.
Yeah.
I actually like that album. It's weird,
As I've
and it's
gotten
not
old,
one I can listen to a lot, but it's like I do like it.
as I've gotten older, I've gotten into some of the early stuff. I was a big fan of We're Only in It for the Money. I had an original
Hmm.
Verve copy of that and had no idea what I had when I was a teenager.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and but that one and Uncle Meat and Weasels Rip My Flesh, those are all really
Weasel. Yeah.
cool albums,
Oh, and
man.
Hot Rats. Can't
Hot
forget Hot
Rats, yeah, man,
Rats.
absolutely. Hot Rats, a great album. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a lot of good stuff in there, and I think that he sort of started off as like a composer slash social satirist, and then
Hmm.
he sort of became like a composer, especially after he fell, it was pushed off the stage in London in was that
Yes.
71, and then he did those jazz albums, and then he sort of picked up that idea and sort of mixed the two things and mixed in a little bit more of comedic element. It was kind of like, National
Uh,
Lampoon and,
yeah,
Her.
and some of those have aged well, and some have not.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Well, I mean,
uh,
if you can get on Amazon Prime right now and you can watch the old Saturday Night Lives, like all of the
mhm.
seasons of Saturday Night Live, and a lot of that stuff is just not very good. It's just,
Yeah.
we remember.
Well, I think Zappa during that period. I mean, there was. I read something where it's like people of SNL talk about their least favorite guest host of all time,
Steven
and
Seagal was
invariably
Zappa. Yeah,
Zappa is
yeah,
right up in the top
yeah.
10.
But I mean, and not so much him, but just the idea of the things that we thought were great at the time don't always date well. They don't always date
No.
well. Because I mean, Chevy Chase and John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, you think of those guys as being really amazing, but if you look at that stuff now, not all of it was very good, and some of it was just, it seemed like they didn't have enough material some nights. They went with
Hmm.
things that weren't really funny. You wonder who wrote this, what they were intending. Some of it's like, um, I don't want to I don't want to get into the whole cancel culture thing, but some of that stuff just,
Wouldn't play.
oh baby. Yeah.
Yeah. I
But
think that, I mean, there's one that I still think is pretty funny, but it would never play today as the Chevy Chase Richard Pryor.
oh yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't
Yeah.
play today.
Yeah.
But but that scene I think is still pretty funny. It still pushes button. It pushes as many buttons as it
Yeah.
did then.
And that's
You
51
know,
years old, isn't it? I think it's 51 years old.
yeah.
No,
Hmm.
50
Hmm.
years, because I think it was 76, early 76. It was the first use of the 7-second delay because they didn't trust Pryor.
Yeah.
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 And the musical guest was Gil Scott Heron that night. He did Johannesburg.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that had one of the best skits on it though. That had, and we're getting really off topic here, but that had Exorcist 2. You remember that one?
Oh yeah.
The bed is on my foot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And but yeah, that was some of that was very good, but a lot of it just wasn't. And so you look back at those things because I'm really attached to the music of the 1960s and 70s, but culturally that was a whole different time with a whole different sense of
Yep.
humor, a whole different sense of morality, whole different sense of rules, and a whole different sense of
Hmm.
people's personalities were like. And yet the music somehow a lot of it survived. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's so much music that really survived. And that's really
Hmm.
cool.
Hmm.
That's really cool that it could transcend. I mean, it's like film from that period, as you know, film from that period. I mean, that was the Renaissance period, the late 60s into about 1980 was for me the
Well, yeah,
Renaissance period.
that was the period where the industry, I mean, and you can trace it all back to uh, um, Easy Rider.
Right.
Easy Rider was a hit, and they didn't know what was going to be a hit anymore. The industry was like at a loss,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so once Easy Rider was a hit, they just started throwing money at young directors and go direct some, and so there was nobody on the back of the directors, so they and they were looking at the European films at the time or from years earlier, and they were trying to emulate those. And then by emulating those, they created a whole renaissance in the U.S. on
Right.
and so
Right.
it's like the idea of someone not being on someone's back to do a commercial success created a whole movement, of great
For a
films.
while, and then it got
Yeah.
worse than ever.
Well, yeah, because
Both the
and
recording industry and the film industry.
yeah. Well, in the film industry, you can kind of directly track that to Steven Spielberg and Jaws.
Yeah, right, right. That
When
changed
Jaws
everything.
became a summer blockbuster, then it became about, oh, we need another summer blockbuster, and then it became, oh, we need the winter blockbuster, oh, we need this blockbuster,
Right,
and
right. And
that's
then
that
and then Michael Cimino really kind of tanked United
with
Artists with
with
Heaven's
Heaven's
Gate.
Gate. Yeah,
So that, like, that was so the artistic thing wasn't working for them and they weren't going to take any more chances
yeah,
on directors like that. I mean, I think the last one was probably, maybe I'm wrong here, but maybe Apocalypse Now. I think that took Coppola like 3 years to make, right? Then he
yeah.
filmed
And
that
I
in
think there's a
76,
certain there's a certain level of renaissance that's happening in the last few years. Like the fact that most likely the best picture this year is going to be one battle after another,
which is
and that's
brilliant.
pretty amazing. Yeah,
Yeah. And that's got
yeah,
that
it's an
vibe to
amazing.
it. It's got that vibe to it.
Yeah,
It's got that kind of vibe to it, I
yep,
think.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Well, Dave, I can't thank you enough. We're going to talk about what we're going to play next, and then we're going to wrap it up. And I think we've talked, we've overshared, I'm sure, but I hope people dig it. I mean, I really, you did so much for the radio show, especially since 2020, and
mhm.
we sort of left very much more abruptly than I would have liked. But I hope we explained that tonight. I hope we explained our long relationship. I hope we explained our mutual love of a lot of music. We've seen a lot of concerts together. I think the last one we
Mhm.
saw was Todd Rundgren, right? Was that the last
Yeah,
one
I
we
believe
saw?
so. Yeah,
So
yeah. I
we got
came
to do some
down
more.
there and saw Todd Rundgren with you. Yep,
Yeah, we got to do some more. We're not dead
absolutely.
yet. We're not dead
And
yet.
we should do a few more of these. I
Oh
think
yeah,
this was fun.
absolutely, man. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So we're going to play a couple tracks to take us out. We're going to play a couple of videos to continue on with the playlist. Stanley Clark from his second album called Stanley Clark. Stanley Clark, as a teenager and somebody that was 20 or 21 years old, he played with Curtis Fuller, Joe Henderson, Pharoah Sanders, Stan Getz, Dexter Gordon, and Art Blakey. That's pretty
Yeah.
impressive. Now that's
Pretty
all straight
pretty
ahead.
impressive.
And then he started playing electric bass with Chick Corea, and in the band Return to Forever. The Return to Forever started off as like a Brazilian thing, like the first two albums, Light as a Feather and Return to Forever, were more Brazilian based, like samba stuff.
Hmm.
And then Chick heard the Mahavishnu Orchestra and went, "Well, we better get a guitar player and rock out." And
Yep.
um, and so he joined that band in 1972, and by this time he was a little bit more pronounced in the electric bass. I mean, he was a really innovative electric bass player and a great slap bass player. I mean, he had really listened to a lot of like Larry Graham with Sly and the Family Stone
Hmm.
and like that. And he was just and his technique, he was very fast and very clean and had a very identifiable sound that people are still trying to copy. Just an
Yep. Yep.
amazing bass player that I don't think really gets his due. He didn't
No.
die young, and death is the ultimate marketing move. So
Right.
we'll play a
And
track called
he never had the one thing that really took off for him that people went back and
right.
revisited his catalog. I
Although,
mean,
man,
he came close a couple of times.
yeah, I mean, the Romantic Warrior album with Return to Forever was incredible, and the School Days album, which was his third album,
Hmm.
fourth album. Um, but those albums that he did at that time, this one and Journey to Love and School Days, those are brilliant albums. They're
And
great.
the only song that was actually technically a hit for him was that one with George Duke, and it was probably the weakest song either of them
Yeah,
recorded,
yeah,
"Sweet
yeah. Yeah,
Baby."
Sweet Baby. Yeah, the
Yeah.
Kirk Duke project. And that was
Hmm.
really a disappointment because those are really heavy players and they were looking to make some money.
Oh, yes, they
Yeah,
were,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
they did off of the album,
Oh
I'm
yeah, they
sure.
did.
But
They did. But it was kind of like this kind of yacht rocky kind of thing. Nothing
yeah,
against that, but it's just like, why don't you stay in your lane?
yeah,
But this is a track
or at
called
least drive in the lane that's really cool to drive in.
Yeah, man, that will date better than that.
Yeah.
This is a track called Lopsy Lou that Stanley wrote, and it's Stanley Clark on the bass, Tony Williams on the drums, Bill Connors, who at that time was the guitarist with Return to Forever, on the guitar, and there he is again, Jan Hammer on the keyboards. So Stanley
And
Clark,
not even playing anything remotely Miami Vice.
no, no, he hadn't gotten to that yet. I mean, Jan Hammer really got around at that point. He's on Billy Cobham's Spectrum album
Hmm.
too, and he's on a couple of Jeff Beck things. And he before he developed that sound that we associate with Jan Hammer, he was just a really tremendous keyboard player, really.
Yeah, yeah.
After that, we'll hear the British blues guitarist Matt Schofield from his fifth LP called As Far as I Can See from February of 2014. We're going to play a track called Red Dragon that's very reminiscent of the long version of Voodoo Child that's on Electric Ladyland, not the
Hmm.
ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, not that one, but the one
Hmm.
where you audibly hear Buddy Miles go, "Turn that goddamn guitar down." Remember that? Steve Winwood's on it and Jack Cassidy. You remember the track I'm talking? It's like 16 minutes long. It's like
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. I can't remember the title, but
it's
yeah,
got
it,
it's called Voodoo Child, and then
oh,
the
Voodoo. Yeah,
the
yeah,
one
yeah,
that we are more familiar with is called Voodoo Child's Slight Return. That's on the
yeah,
last.
yeah, yeah.
But this is reminiscent of that. Matt Schofield on the guitar and the vocals, Johnny Henderson, who's still with him on the organ, and Jordan John on the drums. Some really cool stuff that I hope you'll check out. I hope you checked out all of it and you really dug it. I hope you dug listening to me and Dave talk because that's what we do all the time. We
All
do
the
talk.
two of us just talk
Yeah,
ad infinitum until we just have to go. All right, we have to shut up and get away.
that's right. That's right. This is not paying very well. We should do
Yeah,
something that does. So yeah, yeah. So thank you very much, and I hope
thank
once we
you.
get this on the air, you enjoy it, and I hope everybody enjoys it. And I can't thank you enough again, David. I can't thank you enough
I'm
for
right
all
back
that
at
you
you, man.
do. You know,
Right back at you.
it's been wonderful hanging with you, and I'm sorry that things didn't turn out better with the the whole radio show.
Yeah, well, we're still
Good
plugging.
run. Had a good
You
run.
know,
Had a good
and
run.
we're still plugging. It ain't dead yet.
Right. No, no, no. No, no, no. Walking kind of funny, but
Yeah.
not dead yet. So, but anyway, thank you, and I'll talk to you
Thank you.
soon. And thanks for sharing sh yourself with the
Yeah.
audience.
Well, thanks for having me on, man. It was great fun.
Thanks, brother. I'll talk to you
All
soon.
right, we'll talk to you soon.
Burnt toast!